Okay, you're listening to the award-winning Philadelphia Hall Monitor here on WPPM 106.5 in Philadelphia, on Comcast Channel 66, and streaming live at phillycam.org. You can find us on Twitter at Hall Monitor WPPM, on our website, www.hallmonitor.org, or on Facebook at PHM WPPM. Tonight on the program, we'll be joined by Lisa Haber to discuss recent Philadelphia School Board developments, and Nicole Brunette of the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia will walk us through some of the programs they have to help reduce traffic fatalities here in Philadelphia. So before we get to that, Denise Clay Murray, how are you tonight?
Go ahead. Oh, so I am on the air.
There you are.
Or am I on the air? Yeah. How you doing, Larry? I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get settled in here. I'm
All right.
live at the Philly Cam studio, and right now, Philly Cam is having their annual fund drive. So we'll tell you a little bit later how you can participate in that and make a donation to a station that is kind enough to let a group of government geeks get on here every week and talk to you about what's going on in your city.
Yeah, we're very grateful for that. It's a big week this week, Denise. This is the last city council meeting of the spring session coming up tomorrow, which also means it will probably be the longest session.
Oh, yeah. I've already heard that the words consent agenda will be employed.
Consent agenda, for those who don't know, is when they take all the bills and they vote on them all at once instead of voting on them separately, because it just takes a long time if you're going to have 30 or 40 bills. I expect a large contingent of public commenters and a lot of speeches. So Denise's favorite part of the meeting is public comment.
Yes, it is. I love public comment.
So tomorrow is going to be an interesting day. And there's still more to come after that. The Tax Reform Commission will meet next Monday. And we're going to have a report on that too, because that's very interesting and could possibly have an impact on what's going on in the city.
Yeah.
So now what we're going to do, we've been following this ongoing saga of the Philadelphia School Board. To me, this is a very strange situation we have going on there. But here to tell us more about it is Lisa Haber. Lisa, how are you tonight?
Great. Hi, Larry. Hi, Denise. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So before we get into the school board and what's going on there, can you tell us a little bit about the Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools?
The Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools, of which I'm one of the two co-founders, now coordinator member. We're a grassroots organization, all volunteers. And what we have done over the past 11 years is be active in school issues. We went to all the SRC meetings. Now we go to all the board meetings, and I mean all the board meetings. And yes, Denise, I appreciate it, because I have been a public commenter for years. And actually, there's a special Goals and Guardrails meeting tomorrow, and I'll be at that meeting too. So what we're kind of a small vanguard organization, but we're like a watchdog for the school district and the Board of Education.
Okay. So as I said before you came on, I still feel like this is a very strange situation that we're in on the school board right now. But tell us a little bit about the piece you wrote for us, and then sort of where we are right now.
You mean strange because one of the members has yet to be confirmed by council?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there's nothing new on that front. And it is kind of strange. But so far there's been nothing happening. And we've seen 3 meetings of the present iteration of the school board. Tomorrow would be the 4th. And Joyce Wilkerson has been a member and voting at all of them. So what we're seeing now, the board that were just sworn in May have been chosen throughout that whole process that we talked about before. And if you want to, we can put up the slideshow, because I just put the names of the school board members I think most people probably don't know who they are, but it's a 9-member board, and 4 of those 9 members are incumbents, and that's Reginald Streeter, who the board itself elected president, Joyce Wilkerson, has been in government for many years and was integral part of the John Street mayoral administration, Sarah Ashley Andrews, family therapist, social worker, and Chow Wing Lam. And she's been in a number of positions and was with the Academy of Director of Operations at the Philadelphia Academy of School Leaders. There's Wanda Navalis, who the board at its first meeting elected vice president. She's a founding CEO of the Pan American Charter School. Crystal Cubbage has been a number of things. These are very, very quick bios just to give people an idea of who our board members are. Crystal Cubbage was a teacher. She was an engineer at NASA. She's done many things. Cheryl Harper was also a teacher, a principal and administrator, came up really under Constance Clayton, and I put her years in there. Ms. Harper was an HR director, administrator under Connie Clayton, who served from as superintendent, 1983 to 93. Whitney Jones is now chief financial officer right now, current job at the Children's Crisis Treatment Center. He was also chief financial officer at KIPP Charter Schools here in Texas. He's a graduate of the Broad Superintendent Academy, which is not an accredited academy, but many superintendents, including previous superintendent William Height, was a graduate of the Broad Academy, and Joan Stern, who is a retired public finance attorney and was bond counsel to the state for many years. So that's who they are. And what I was looking at this month is, where do we think this new school board is going? How are they going to govern? And based on looking back at the first board, and when I say the first board, I mean the one after, the abolishment of the School Reform Commission which was state opposed. I mean, there had been a school board for 100 years before that. And one of the points that I made is that the people of the city, but especially the people who were fighting to get rid of the state-imposed School Reform Commission, I was one of them, was really looking forward to local control, because we don't actually have local control. We have mayoral control. The mayor picks all 9 members of the board. There is a confirmation process by city council, and those terms run concurrent with the board's term. What they do is oversee an annual $4.5 billion budget. They make decisions about school district policy. They are, as this school board, the local charter school authorizer, and they hold monthly meetings, public meetings with public testimony. So they're very important people in the city. They're not often covered as a political body, but they really are a political body. They're chosen by the mayor. They're approved by city council. They spend public money. They have public hearings. They are a political body. Maybe not partisan politics, because they're not elected, but they're a very important body in the city. And it's important that people know who is on that board and where they came from. Do they have any educational experience? What businesses are they associated with? Do they have, did they testify at school boards? And really, the only person I think that I can think of in these first 2 boards that I actually knew who that person was Joyce Wilkerson. Actually, the second one was Chris McGinley, because Chris McGinley, who had been on the SRC and then the board, was, again, somebody who came up through the district as a teacher and administrator, and actually became a superintendent. And it was important to have that voice on the board of somebody who really grew up in the city. He went to the schools. His kids went to the schools. He knew that system inside and out. We don't really have that. We do have some people who have been teachers, but many years ago. So that is one way to look at this board. But I don't know how you know what a body is going to do when they don't tell you and you don't meet them. And when the first board was appointed by Mayor Kenny, there were town halls, South Philly, West Philly, River boards, or at least 4 town halls where people could go and talk to them. And okay, yeah, it was after they were chosen, but they did feel that it was incumbent upon them to go out and talk to people. We have not seen that this time. I've been to all of the meetings of this board, May 2nd, May 30th, and June 6th, which was a meeting that was held out in the community at Rush Academy of the Arts in the Northeast. And honestly, like I said, except for like present and yes, no, or maybe abstain, we haven't heard much from the new members of the board.
Well, when you say you haven't heard much, have they said anything at all about what they intend to do? Because during the hearings, which is a Friday of my life I will never get back, for that confirmed most of these appointees, board president Reginald Streeter did all of the talking just about. So, has there been anything since from someone other than Streeter about what this board's leanings are or what their intentions are?
Well, the reason that Streeter did most of the talking, I don't think it was all, because I know other people. I remember Miss Chow Wing Lam saying something. That hearing that day was really not designed to hear from people.
Right.
Well, that hearing was about, as I said, showing what dark money could buy, and it was clear that the private interests who are behind the privatization of public schools, which end up being charter schools, had done a very, very intense and successful job of lobbying city council. So that hearing, which I testified, didn't seem. I went there thinking that they were going to talk to the 9 people, in particular the 5 new people who nobody, had actually seen them in a public setting. That didn't happen. It was designed to air grievances of businesses associated with the school district. So when you say, have they said anything? No. Again, I remember even previous to this board appointed by Mayor Sherelle Parker, when new board members would come on, like, say 2 people left and 2 people come on, they would like take 2 minutes to say, this is who I am and this is where I came from, and I believe in this, or I have a 2nd grader in this school, and I'm here to serve the public, and there hasn't been anything like that. I mean, I've been at these 3 meetings, and other than, as I said, just the perfunctory yes, no, present, abstain, and a few questions from one of the presenters, there's been no direct comment addressed to the members of the public.
Wow.
Yeah. It is shocking, but in some ways not surprising when you look at how people are selected for the school board. If you're chosen in a secret process, nowhere in that process do you get the message that you are here to serve the public. I make it a point to say this is an independent board, that when they're sworn in, they take an oath to serve the public. They're not taking an oath to serve the mayor or anybody on city council. But when you're going on your 4th meeting and you have not heard one word from people to say, this is who I am, and this is why I want to be on the board, and this is what I think the priorities for the district could be. That is really not an indication that the board is there to hear from the public and wants to engage with the public.
So with the previous board, was it more like there were multiple people, every member would say something or have an opinion on something, or, just about every meeting you would hear from almost everybody?
I would say yes, and it's not to say that as the months go on that people won't become more vocal, but I think it's important for people to actually address the audience, to address the people who are attending the meeting, and anybody who's going to be watching that meeting. I mean, yeah, I remember when Reginald Streeter, who had been on the board and then he was elected, and he did make. It was rather long, his acceptance speech, but it was a speech. I mean, he was telling people, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, this is what I think the priority should be. That's what I expect anybody who is appointed or elected to serve the public to talk to the public.
So has the school district started budget hearings yet?
Yes, those. That's such a good question, because those budget hearings are not like city council. One of the things that I noted was, because I'm going to these city council meetings now every week, and it's interesting about city council is that all bills, resolutions, ordinances have to be read at least twice. They have to go to committee. There's public testimony in committee, then they come back to the whole council and there's public testimony then. There's a really extended process for anything that's going to be passed. Now, the city has a, what is the figure for the city budget at this point?
The operating budget is $6.3 billion.
All right, $6.3 billion. The school district right now is $4.5 billion. At the last meeting, the action meeting on May 30th, that board voted in a consent agenda. May I say that every single one of the 47 items was in the consent agenda. So nothing was read out, nothing was talked about. There were no questions, there were no comments. In one vote, the board approved over $70 million in public spending. That's not good, because this is the same way the city council is spending public money. So is this school board. And it's not to say you have to question every single one of those 47 items, but you're up to $70 million. There are items in there that are 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. There should be at least one explanation, question, comment about that kind of spending.
Now, are there still problems with people getting into the room and people being able to ask questions?
Yeah. Yes. The last meeting, that May 30th action meeting, there were a lot of problems, and I wrote about that in our apps newsletter report on that. And when I testified last week, I told this board, I've been coming to these meetings for a long time in that room at 440 North Broad Street, in that second floor auditorium. And they have taken about, I would say sometime in the last year, they've taken about 100 chairs out of the auditorium. So the sign on the back of the wall will say this, the fire marshal sign, this room holds 240 people. Every time I go in for any meeting, I count the chairs and there's about 140. So what happened to those 100 chairs? And when you come in, the security downstairs will say to you, are you on the speaker list? And if you say no, they might not let you up. So when the board initiated the speaker suppression policies in 2021 and apps went to court about that, it was bad enough that they were saying, okay, unlike the SRC before them, who just like, well, if there's, 80 speakers, I guess we'll just sit here and listen to 80 people. The board put a limit on that and put a limit on the number of minutes that you could speak from 3 to 2. And now it's not just that you can't speak, it's that you can't be in the room. And there is plenty of room in that room. But the last action meeting was not a good scene. And there were like Philadelphia police officers on bikes in front of the elevators in the school district building. I mean, that just really should not be. It should not be at all. There were plenty of empty seats. I hate to keep comparing them unfavorably to the School Reform Commission, but seriously, they never did that. And often people would stand in the back, and that was not a problem. Not a problem. So, if this board is going to be a public board and say, we're transparent, we have community engagement, one, let people in the room, and two, don't have police officers blocking people, which, includes students and parents. Mm-hmm. That is, luckily nothing happened, but, you can really set up a bad situation, especially with young people. You just really don't want to do that. So I feel like we're off to not a very good start with the board. And when we reconvened this board back in 2018 after the SRC, there was a lot of hope. Wow, we're going to stop the privatization of our neighborhood schools. We're going to stop the hostile takeovers, but we're going to really change the spending priorities, stop all the money going to consultants. And, a lot of that really just did not happen. So it was disappointing. And one of the things that's, conspicuous by their absence really was that there wasn't any one initiative that they could put their legacy on. And I thought the most obvious thing would be to bring back public, school librarians in school libraries. It's been written about, it's been talked about. It's not a controversial issue. I really have never read an op-ed where somebody said school libraries are bad and they're a waste of time. We don't want to ever, never have I heard anybody say that. The board could have said, here's what we're going to do. We're back. We're local control. People want, smaller class size. They want to bring back school librarians. We're going to do that.
Well, and it was funny too, because you didn't hear much about that during the city council hearings either. With the exception of one or two council members who have mentioned it was not a something that was considered in depth.
Are you talking about that confirmation hearing?
Yeah.
What issues were discussed other than the board is unfair to charter operators?
Yeah. That was pretty much it. Yeah.
That was pretty much it. There were, it was mentioned. I do remember that. But smaller class size and it's so many issues. I could just, say, here's the speakers list from the last board meeting, and here's 5 things that people came to talk about. And I don't think, 4 of them were even talked about in city council.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, earlier this week, actually yesterday, Mayor Parker had a press conference with folks from various stakeholders in the school district to make a plea to Harrisburg for fair funding. And that was something that everyone has been, kind of clamoring for, a fair funding formula that not only takes the old money into consideration, but also the new money. And there was a Commonwealth Court ruling that didn't really have a whole lot of rule to it that said that the legislature was supposed to come up with something. Now, the House passed something, but anyone who knows Harrisburg, particularly when it comes to the fact that it's divided in terms of the legislature right now, knows that whatever the House passed will probably go to the Senate and die. Then on top of that, there was a story in a couple of the hip hop publications, Double XL, I believe it was. And I've seen advertisements for this on Twitter and other social media platforms from the record company Rock Nation, their Team Rock education arm, is now joining with folks who are interested in the school voucher program that Governor Josh Shapiro has been trying to put on the budget for the last couple of years. When you see stuff like that, and you see that the school board isn't really talking to people, and you see that Harrisburg is basically playing, the games that it's often played when it comes to education in Philadelphia, that what do you look at, like, particularly like the Philadelphia delegation to the legislature, and just want to ask, what are you actually doing? Because it appears that whatever it is you're actually doing isn't really working for the students, or in terms of funding, or in terms of getting them what they need.
Yes. It was good to see people out there yesterday and really pushing, and it was great turnout. Lifeline scholarship, vouchers, whatever the name that's put on it at this time or place, they don't work. I can recommend a good book to everybody called The Privateers, Josh Cowan. And he's the expert right now, I would say, on vouchers. And he's looked at the effectiveness or lack thereof of vouchers in different states, including Arizona and Ohio. And they really are just basically a tax subsidy for more affluent people whose children already go to private schools.
Yeah.
Giving somebody $2,000 to go to a school that costs $18,000, it doesn't mean anything. The schools, the private schools are private. They don't have to accept anybody they don't want to accept. They don't have to provide special ed services to anybody or English language. They do not have to do any of that. Do they want to discriminate against LGBTQ students? They can do that and still get public money. So it's for many, many reasons, it is a bad idea. It's not the answer. It diverts money from public schools. I don't know why the governor has not finally declared that he understands that these are not a good thing. And I was disappointed to see Mayor Parker sidestepping the issue. Lifeline scholarships are not going to help the children of the city in any way. Can only hurt them.
Yeah, I saw a study recently by the Brookings Institution that talked about how kids who end up going to these schools go to schools on voucher programs actually end up with learning loss and have to go back to their public school
Right.
to catch up. And my experience with covering voucher programs, and because sometimes I get on social media and forget that that's where good sense and logical argument go to die,
Like public comment.
and public comment. I ended up talking to someone, and saying, look, back when I first started covering school reform and the subject of vouchers came up, the thing that most people kept having a problem with was if you were able to use the voucher at all, because there were a lot of school districts that folks wanted to take their vouchers to that wouldn't take them. And particularly at the time when I was covering this, the two places where this was most prevalent were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Florida. And there were places that, folks wanted to take their voucher from a so-called failing school and take it to another school or another school district where they thought that their kids might do better. And these places refused to accept the vouchers. And it was,
Right.
and the pool of people who were willing to take those vouchers was actually so small
Right.
that it really had no impact.
Right.
So
It's just a tax subsidy for families, more affluent families whose children are already in private schools. Taking public money does not make a school public. they don't have to accept anybody they don't want to, and they can kick out anybody for sexual preference or any other reason that public schools do not kick kids out for.
Mm-hmm.
So if people want to get involved with the Alliance for Public Schools, and especially if they want to get involved with, saying to the folks in Harrisburg, hey, how about giving, our schools the kind of money that you give Lower Merion, how would they go about doing that?
Well, I would say right now, people who are organizing for Harrisburg are Children First, which is in Philadelphia, and Ed Voters, which is statewide. They're doing a great job. We had a couple members, APS members, go up to Harrisburg yesterday to be part of this, but we really always want to have new members. We're looking at more the local issues. When we get that money from Harrisburg, it will be so fantastic. But it's going to be those 9 people who decide how the money is being spent and where that money goes. And are we going to stop, hiring consultants? Are we going to stop outsourcing stuff? Are we going to just keep paying, money to charter schools so that one charter CEO can be paid over $400,000? I mean, are we going to spend this money on the children? This new board could say, one thing we're going to do with that money, we're going to start putting back certified school librarians into fully functioning libraries. That would make them maybe the most popular school board ever. But they have to make the commitment, one, to talk to people and listen to them. And when people come and give public comment, they're putting themselves out there. They sign up, their name is there, their face is there. They are saying, I came down here to tell you what I believe and what is the best thing for my kid's school and everybody's kid's school. And that board should say, we're listening to you, and not just like stare at people and not say anything, but have some response. And the response is in the actions. If people come to you every single week and talk about school librarians, then you should say, all right, we're going to make that a priority. One of the great things that the last board did in its final days was to say, we are going to find the money to end leveling.
Yeah.
Right. That was a great thing. And people really responded to it. It was such a positive thing. And it was something that people talked about year after year after year, and all the terrible. In fact, there's an op-ed in the Inquirer today. Nicole Weigel-Landowski wrote in the Inquirer about leveling. And it was so great when they finally said, okay, we are going to find the money and this is not going to happen anymore. When you do something that positive, people really respond. And then you get more people to say, I believe in public education because public education under this school board is listening to me and responding and doing what the community wants, the best thing for the children.
Okay.
All right. So where can people find the APS report and more information about what you're working on? We're
on appsphilly.net. There is a board meeting tomorrow. You can always see me there. And you can see the other APS members at the board meetings. We're on appsphilly.net. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Love to hear from people. Thank you so much, Larry and Denise.
Anytime, Lisa. We'll have you on soon. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Take care.
Now, Denise.
Yes.
You're not going to believe this. We are in the middle of a fund drive.
Oh.
Here at Philly Cam. I don't have the script in front of me. I'm hoping you do.
Oh, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Well, okay. Here we go. Philly Cam is engaging in WPPM's 106.5 FM's 2024 fund drive to raise funds for our community radio station, which is us. In 2024, WPPM is setting our sights on redesigning our studio to better accommodate live music performances, panel discussions, and video live streams. That sounds cool. These funds will help cover costs These costs, as well as updates to our transmitter, antenna, radio board, remote broadcast tools, and other equipment. Donations from this drive will not only keep the lights on, but also support our mission to showcase local voices and to have 4 government geeks get on here every week and talk to you about what's happening in City Hall here on Philadelphia Hall Monitor.
Mm-hmm.
If you would like to donate, and we really hope you will, and we would acknowledge your support of Hall Monitor. If you like what we do, please donate by going to wppm.phillycam.org/donate. Again, that's wppm.phillycam.org/donate. Again, there's not a whole lot of places that will give you the kind of programming like Philadelphia Hall Monitor that WPPM 106.5 does. So do us a favor, do your city a favor, do your neighbors a favor, and show us some love. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, Denise. And now we're going to do one of those interviews that you talked about. This is a conversation we had earlier today with Nicole Burnett of the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia. And they are, amongst many things we're working on, is traffic safety here in Philadelphia. So here's our interview with Nicole Burnett.
Okay. Let's see if I can find it.
All right. Nicole Burnett, thank you so much for joining us.
Nice to be here.
All right. So before we get into some of the work you're working on right now, can you just give us a little background on what the Bicycle Coalition is and what they do?
Mm-hmm. So the Bicycle Coalition is a nonprofit that has been advocating for street safety and education around bicycle safety for over 50 years in Philadelphia and the greater Philadelphia area. So education and advocacy are really our 2 pillars. We think about both of these as removing barriers to bicycling. One, giving people the resources like bike, a helmet, lights, teaching people how to ride in the city, feeling comfortable on the road. And then our advocacy is really focused on building a safer environment, which safety is a majority reason that a lot of people don't choose to ride their bike for commuting or for recreation. I like to think of our work as we don't just want to make people ride bikes. We want to give people the opportunity. When people step out their door in the morning, they can, go about their day by walking, riding a bike, taking transit, or driving safely.
So tell us a little bit about the Families for Safe Streets program.
Yeah, so Families for Safe Streets is in itself a nonprofit. It was started in New York in 2013. We have a local chapter here. The Bicycle Coalition is the fiscal sponsor for Families for Safe Streets Greater Philadelphia. Our chapter was started in 2018 with LaTanya Bird, Laura Fredericks, and Shannabelle Morris, all mothers, aunts who lost family members within Philadelphia.
And, so one of the things that I think about a lot, and we actually talked a little bit about this before we started recording this interview, we have seen a degradation of traffic safety in the city of Philadelphia. What is that is that the case? Is that what's really happening? Is it getting worse? Or are we just looking at it more? And what are some of the causes of that, if that's the case?
Yeah, traffic violence spiked in 2020, not just in Philadelphia, all across the country, major cities and smaller cities. We went from losing around 80 to 90 Philadelphians before the pandemic to losing 150. So this is a humongous spike. We are seeing a slight decrease in fatalities overall since 2020, but we're still at around 120 to 125 fatalities. We have not reached pre-pandemic levels. So I think a big part of it is that our infrastructure is outdated. A lot of our infrastructure still is very car-centric. Since the pandemic, people use their car for smaller tasks. There was a report that came out in, I believe, 2021 that said more people are using their car for trips under a mile. That can be accomplished walking, biking, and maybe those trips were accomplished through walking and biking or taking public transit before the pandemic. Another impact is that we've seen public transit services and funding decrease. Philadelphia, along with other cities across the country and also smaller cities, are dealing with an impact in funding for transit agencies. So we're not unlike other people in other cities in that respect. And people see public transit, walking and biking as a unsafe activity. So there's this. We talk a lot about this perception of safety. Are the roads unsafe, or are we just perceiving them to be unsafe? And like I said, we are seeing a slight decrease, but maybe it doesn't seem like that for every person on the street. I'll also add that in this time, phone usage has really gone up. Also, cars are different. Cars are getting heavier, they're getting bigger, there's more technology inside of them. There's been a lot of talk on the federal level about safety improvements for people inside the vehicle, but not as much of a conversation about how do we improve the safety for the people outside. It's almost impossible to see a person like my height. I'm 5'4". I don't know if you can see me if you're in an F-150. This is a problem that we weren't having 10 years ago.
So more people driving means pedestrians feel less safe, so they drive more. And then we have this compounding problem here. So I'm going to ask you the hard question here. You answer as much as you can, because I know there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer here. But what does a comprehensive traffic safety plan look like in Philadelphia?
So we like what's called the safe systems approach. This is a tool that is used by planners. It's not widely used by every planner across our country, but basically it says we need it's like a Swiss cheese intervention. So we need road design improvements and we need enforcement. Together, they will help to reduce the number of serious crashes that result in fatalities or serious injuries. So by combining, making the roads safer for our vulnerable users, so our pedestrians, our bicyclists, this means reducing the size of roads, reducing the number of lanes, improving the crosswalks, adding protected bike lanes, focusing on the visibility of vulnerable users, and then enforcement. You can't just have this perfect street and still not enforce basic traffic laws like running red lights or speeding or distracted driving. So the combination of the two really help to change drivers' behavior without just sitting down every day and be like, drive better.
All right, I'd like to bring you Denise Clay Murray here on Philadelphia Hall Monitor.
Hi, thank you for joining us today. And I guess my first question for you is, you just described what a comprehensive safety plan would look like for the city of Philadelphia. Has there been any talk in city council about that? Have you all talked to the folks on council who would ultimately have to make this decision about putting such a plan in place?
Yeah, so Philadelphia is a Vision Zero city, which means we have a Vision Zero action plan. And for folks who don't know, Vision Zero is a goal of eliminating traffic fatalities. In Philadelphia, our goal is to do that by the year 2050. So there is a plan in place, and we use this plan to apply for federal grants to improve some of our worse intersections in the city, and with a specific focus on improving the infrastructure for pedestrians and bicyclists. So the plan exists, but each design of each street and each intersection doesn't exist until you get funding to do so. So a lot of the work we do is going to city council members and to the Office of Transportation and Infrastructure, raising the importance of thinking about vulnerable users in these projects. And then on the other side, for enforcement, we have been very involved with advocating for automated enforcement with speeding, red lights, and using assisted camera enforcement to enforce parking violations. We have been very successful about this. Philadelphia right now is voting to expand our speed camera program to the entirety of Route 611, which is Broad Street, one of our most dangerous streets in the city. So that combination of receiving the federal grants for road safety improvements and then the enforcement are really how we go hand in hand. But it's a long process.
Now, if the goal is to have fewer cars on the roads and have people more reliant on transit and riding a bike and other things that don't necessarily involve cars, there are some roads that's going to be harder to do on than others. For example, the Roosevelt Boulevard. I wouldn't get on the bike on the boulevard on a bet.
No, me neither.
So how do we, I guess, so how do we get to a point where we can have the kind of conversation that will allow people who may want to travel on a bike on places like the Roosevelt Boulevard, like parts of Broad Street? How do we get to a point where it's safe to do that?
Yeah. So these are really good examples. I and you may not want to ride a bike on Roosevelt Boulevard or Broad Street, and we have the choice to do something different. But there's tons of people in our city who don't have that choice. They rely on getting around by walking, taking public transit, or riding a bike. That's their main mode of transportation. So it doesn't matter how dangerous the road is now, those people still exist. There is a plan for Roosevelt Boulevard called Route for Change, but it doesn't have funding. So the first thing we can do is fund that program. It includes a massive road diet. The auxiliary roads will be turned into multi-use paths. It includes rapid public transit, rapid buses. There's talk of the Roosevelt Boulevard. There's things we can do to change what that boulevard looks like, and actually carve out real protected space for vulnerable users. We just need to fund it. We need federal money, we need state money, and we need city money.
Now, one of the more controversial plans in terms of like traffic calming and safety was the Washington Avenue plan from last year. Depending on what side of Washington Avenue you're on, you either have the little bumpers that are next to the bike lanes to keep people from getting hit in a bike lane, or you don't. And depending on who you talk to, either the folks on Councilman Squilla's side of Washington Avenue that own businesses are unhappy with what's going on over there. And then you have the folks on Councilman Johnson's side of Washington Avenue where none of that was done, but there's a lot of businesses there. And that's kind of why it wasn't done. What can we learn from what happened with Washington Avenue to improve what we do as a city in terms of traffic calming measures?
Yeah, I think Washington Avenue is a really classic example of new data and old impressions really coming up at front to each other. We have data that shows how many crashes, how many fatalities, like serious crashes. Small crashes don't end up in our data. So serious crashes and fatalities that happened on the road. We can tell, how many people walk on the road, how many people bike on the road, and we can use that data to improve the livability for people who are outside of the car. And that was really the driving force to the improvements, the road diet, the bike lanes, the bump outs. But this is the case where so many people who've lived in those neighborhoods for generations see this as a corridor not meant for people walking or biking. They see it as, an industrial corridor, and change is difficult. I think something we can learn from that is that community engagement is very important. The pandemic was very much impacted community engagement across the country, but that impacted the story that the city was able to tell, and the data they were able to really use to educate neighbors. So I would hope that we learn that new types of community engagement, there's different kinds of like websites and stuff we can look at. But then as well, we need council to be on board to see street safety and the safety of vulnerable users as a priority. And what I learned from that is that Councilmember Johnson didn't see that as a priority. He wanted to listen to a specific group of neighbors who wanted this industrial corridor to remain. Now that we have the two sides of Washington Avenue, we can look at the data. We can show Councilmember Johnson that this road diet didn't impact traffic patterns. It didn't impact how fast people could get from one side to the other, and it improved the safety of drivers, the safety of bicyclists, and the safety of pedestrians. It also increased ridership for bicyclists by I have to find the exact percentage, but by like over 50%. So if it takes showing him the impact of that infrastructure, I guess let's do it.
Okay, and just one more question really quick. We talk a lot about poverty on this show and the impact of poverty, and even you kind of alluded to it yourself when we talked about Roosevelt Boulevard and how some people can't necessarily afford to drive somewhere or whatever, that they have to rely on walking, mass transit, and riding a bike. But in some cases, a decent bike is out of the price range of a lot of people. I mean, I worked several jobs and I've priced bikes and I'm like, this is almost a down payment on a car. What can we, I guess, what is it that your organization has been doing to try to make it so if you can't afford a car, but you can't necessarily afford a bike either, you can have access to one?
Yeah. So we, through our education department, we have a partnership with Better Bike Share Partnership and Indigo, and we teach learn to ride classes, urban riding basics classes, and help facilitate rides in the Indigo surface area. So a lot of the goals from that program obviously are to get people comfortable, know how to use bike, but also show them the resource that Indigo has in the city. As well, Indigo's pricing model has a space for low income people. They're like, you can use the access card to get a cheaper membership. So for some people, the Indigo bike is, a great a way to get around. But there are also nonprofits that give bikes out. So we have one in Philadelphia called Neighborhood Bike Works in West Philly that we do a lot of work with. And so they've been a really great asset. They sell much cheaper parts for bikes. They teach people how to repair their bikes. And there are countless examples across the state of other nonprofits that are able to give people out bikes and teach them bike maintenance. So I would love to see more investment in this, but we need it coupled with street safety. The most dangerous streets in our city are in some of the most low income areas. This was done on purpose. This was done so people could go into the city, go to work, and then drive back out to the suburbs as fast as possible. But a lot of these roads, stripped apart neighborhoods. They destroyed whole blocks of houses and really separated communities. And those communities still exist. Roosevelt Boulevard being a big case where people have to cross the boulevard to go to their family and friends, to go to schools, to go to rec centers. And it should be pretty basic that they should be able to cross the street to be able to live their life.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to give you back to my co-host, Larry McGlynn, and you're listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5.
All right. Thank you, Denise. And Nicole, thank you very much. Before we let you go, can you tell us where people can find out more about the Bicycle Coalition?
Yes, you can visit our website at bicyclecoalition.org. We've got a lot of great resources. We have maps, events, news, and ways to get involved with our work.
All right. Nicole Burnett, thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
All right. We'd like to thank Nicole Burnett from the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia for joining us on the program. They're going to come back on with us probably before the fall to tell us about some things they have coming up and some events they're going to have and, updates on legislation. So we're excited to have them come back again soon. Denise, you're not going to believe this.
What?
We're still in the pledge drive.
Yay! Well, actually, tonight is the last night of the pledge
That's
drive.
right.
So if you haven't made your pledge to Philly Cam on behalf of Hall Monitor and the work we do here and the work that Block by Block does, they preceded us, and the other programming that you get on WPPM 106.5, please do so by going to wppm.phillycam.org/donate. That's wppm.org phillycam.org/donate. And remember, if you contribute, to Philly Cam, they're trying to raise money to make some improvements to the technology, to expand some of the studio space so there can be like live music and different things here. This is your public access media. This is what this is your access to being able to put on programming that you want to see from voices you want to hear from. So like I said, if the prospect of watching 4 government geeks tell you what's going on in City Hall every Wednesday night from 6 to 7 is something that you appreciate, show Philly Cam some love and go to wppm.phillycam.org/donate.
All right. And speaking of government geeks and things going on, as we mentioned earlier, tomorrow was the last meeting of Philadelphia City Council before the end of the spring session. They'll be back in early September for the fall session. And I think a lot's going to happen between now and then as well. But what we only have a couple minutes left. So we're just going to tell you that in a week or two, we're going to have some people on to come on with us and talk about the budget that was just passed. So we're gonna do a whole thing with that. We want to take our time with it. I've gone through it and read the entire thing. The good news is I've read it. The bad news is when you read something like that, you don't remember what any of it was. It's hard to keep the numbers straight. Somebody yesterday called me and asked me just a general question. I said, I don't know if it was 14 million or 19 million. I don't remember. It was one of those two, and I have to go back and look. So we're going to have some people come on with us to talk about that. We're going to do a whole big budget special, and it'll be before PICA does their rubber stamp of the budget, which they have to do to make sure that we get our state funding that we need. So we're going to have a big show about that coming up real soon. And it's going to be good. I think that's going to be a good one. We have some good people lined up for it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, I'm being told we only have about a minute left. So, like I said, tomorrow is the last session of City Council in the coming weeks. We're going to bring you some interviews with council members to talk about key pieces of legislation they put up in the session and just generally what they thought about the session, the budget, and what they're looking forward to as we move into the fall. So we're hopefully going to start that in a couple of weeks as well. So even when City Council stops, Denise, a whole other thing starts up again.
Right.
Talking about what happened, how it happened, what's coming up, what impacts these things are going to have. So it never ends.
Who it happened to.
Yep.
But next week, we're also going to be talking a little bit about Juneteenth, which is on Wednesday. And for those of you who don't know what Juneteenth is the day in American history where the last group of enslaved Americans in Texas found out that the Civil War ended and that they were free.
So we hope you look forward to that, and we will see you next week on Hall Monitor.